Hey, this is Dr. Corey Glenn with Blue Sky Bio, and I was just about to send this case out to someone I'm working with this on, and thought it was a good opportunity to showcase our fully guided keyless kit. This is for the Biomax system. We also have this for the internal hex implant, and as you can see, this is going to be a bone-supported guided case. And so I've got the surgical guide. We segmented the bone in Blue Sky Plan. We planned all of it for the fully guided keyless kit. Now, one thing that may jump out to you, the kit is designed to be used with surgical guide sleeves, the little titanium sleeves. But because it is a keyless kit, it just means that there's no cutting surface that's going to interface with this. So you can actually hack this and just change the diameter so that you don't have to use a guide tube. It's really up to you, your preference as far as that goes. Now, again, every single drill in this kit has the built-in key on it, and so if you can see that, every drill has its cutting portion, and then it has the exact same built-in key with an 8.5 millimeter offset, and it doesn't matter which drill in the kit I pick up, they would all have the common shape from the cutting portion to right here. They're all the same from that point forward. Now, the distinction that makes this a fully guided kit is that you also have guided implant drivers. So when you go to place the implant, once again, this has the same built-in key, and you can drive the implant through the guide, and when the stop bottoms out, that tells you that you are at full depth with your implant and you need to stop turning on it. So let's go through how I would approach this case. First of all, the holes for the pins, this is actually not in this kit, but it would use this 2.2 drill. You would take it to depth until it bottoms out, come out, and then your pin will fit in. So if you use pins, the software will tell you that you need to purchase this drill. This is not part of the kit. So we've got the pins in place now, and the first drill that you always need to use is this drill flat. This is more or less a profiler. And so what this is going to do is be used in every single site where the fully guided keyless kit is being used. It's going to go in and it's just going to profile off a flat 5 or so millimeter hole on the crest of the bone. And it's critical that you use this, because if you don't, all of your subsequent drills are going to end up binding up about 2 millimeters short. They would kind of bind up right about there, and you wouldn't be able to get it in, and that's because the crest has not been profiled to accept those. So very important, you always use that drill first. That is the drill flat. And then always start upper left corner of the kit. So this would be the 2.0 diameter in 6 millimeter length. We would take that, we would use this everywhere. So use this in every site in the kit, in the case. And then there's a couple of options that you could go with from here. Some people like to go up in diameter, staying in that initial length, and then go up to their length. Rather than that, I would prefer to stay in the 2 millimeter diameter, go up in your length, and then over. But really and truly, the way I normally use this is I kind of take a diagonal approach. And so in this case, most of these implants are going to be 4.3 by 10 millimeter implants, so 10 length. Yellow is 4.3 diameter implant final drill, which is truly a 3.9 millimeter diameter drill. So this would be the final drill if you were to follow that sequence. And so what I would typically do is I still always start up here. I do the profiler, then I start upper left corner, but then I kind of jump across diagonally. So I would go 2 by 6, 2.5 by 8, 3 by 10. Now I'm at length. And to be quite honest, I oftentimes will stop one full drill size shorter in, smaller in diameter, and maybe only use the final drill in the top 2 to 3 millimeters. I find that when I do that, I'm getting the best primary stability without having to worry about putting excessive stress on the crestal bone. Okay, so again, if we were following this case and going up to that, I would take the 2.5 by 8 millimeter drill, go everywhere with that, and then I would go to 3 by 10. Unlike our direct cut drills, which is just one drill and you go straight to the final, you've got to use the subsequent drills here first, because imagine if you didn't first use a 6 millimeter drill and you just went straight to, let's say, a 13 millimeter. Okay, so you stick this in and boom, it hits bone and the key is not even engaged. as you can see right there. So that's why you have to go with the shorter drills first, create that tube or that osteotomy into which those drills can feed themselves into, and actually get that built-in key engaged. And then finally, once we've made the osteotomy and we're ready to place the implant, you would need to get the guided carrier. Now there are two guided carriers, as you can see right here. This one is the standard diameter guided driver. It says 8.5 on there. It's shorter, and this is what the software is going to default to use. So obviously don't use ungloved hands when handling an implant, but you would pick your implant up out of the package. I usually will take this in, tighten it as much as I can by hand, and then once I can't tighten it by hand anymore, switch over to the ratchet driver and crank this the rest of the way in. Now, when would you use this? Well, there are occasions, and you'll see this in the software, where the software defaults to that 8.5 millimeter offset, and yet you look at it and know that that tube is going to be impinging into tissue or bone because you're placing it deep, maybe it's an immediate, whatever the case may be. So when that's the case, you might have to raise the guide tube up, okay? You can raise the guide tube up in increments of 2 millimeters, and now you would be using this variable offset driver. And this is an interesting design because this is a driver that can now be used at an 8.5 millimeter offset, just like this one, or a 10.5 or a 12.5. And the way that that's accomplished is unique because it simply uses a Biomax cover screw. That's all this is. And depending on which of these three holes you put this screw into, it's going to determine whether that is an 8.5, 10.5, or 12.5. If you put it in the very top hole right here, that would become a 12.5 offset, meaning you raised the guide tube 4 millimeters from 8.5 up to 12.5. Okay, I've got this one in the middle hole, which is the 10 millimeter slot, which assumes that I raised the guide tube up by 2 millimeters. So when I go to place the implant, I would be driving this in, and I know I moved the guide tube up, and so by using this variable carrier set at 2 millimeters, it's going to allow me to get that 2 extra millimeters that this one would not get me. Now, the one other thing that's really important to recognize about this kit is, again, every single drill in the kit is designed with that 8.5 millimeter offset, okay? Which means if I raise up the guide tube, then I've effectively shortened every drill in the kit. So if I raise that guide tube 2 millimeters up from an 8.5 millimeter offset up to a 10.5 millimeter offset, that means that I've effectively taken 2 millimeters off of every drill in the kit. Okay, so how would you account for that? That means if, let's say I had planned for a 4.3 by 8 millimeter implant, I'm going to have to go in reality up to the 4.3 by 10 millimeter drill because, again, 2 millimeters have been taken off the length by raising that tube. That's really the only nuance to learn with this kit. And doing that little bit of simple math to me is a really easy thing to justify given how many other advantages there are as far as access is concerned, simplicity and cost of the kit. I just really think it's nice. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense of how this kit works, and we'll see you next time.